The night fractured into a chaotic symphony of splintering wood and shattered glass. Three figures, their forms silhouetted against the sudden blinding glare of flashlights, stormed into the intimate sanctuary of a private residence. The lead detective's boot crunched on debris, his sergeant a shadow at his heels, hand instinctively on his weapon. Behind them, their captain surveyed the destruction with a practiced, detached air. The woman in the bed bolted upright, sheets tangled around her legs, momentarily disoriented by the harsh light. "Hands where we can see them," the detective barked, his voice cutting through the ringing silence. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hands, her eyes adjusting to the scene of devastation. Furniture overturned, drawers violently wrenched open, papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Then, the detective's flashlight beam froze, a stark, unwavering cylinder of light. On the bedroom wall, a navy blue jacket hung, emblazoned with the gold letters FBI. The light held steady for 3 tense seconds, the silent emblem a stark, irrefutable truth. The detective's radio crackled, the sergeant's breathing hitched, and a palpable shift in the room's energy registered, cold and undeniable. The jacket, a silent witness, spoke volumes about the gravity of their error. This was not merely a wrong door, it was a profound jurisdictional breach, a tactical misstep with potentially catastrophic implications. Yet, the momentum of the raid, once initiated, proved difficult to halt. The irony was immediate and profound. They had targeted a federal agent. She observed the systematic ransacking of her bedroom with an almost clinical detachment, a seasoned professional taking inventory. Her eyes methodically tracked badge numbers, her gaze shifting to note exact times on the digital clock. When the sergeant roughly searched her dresser, his face became an indelible imprint in her memory. Unlike most victims who would succumb to panic, she was calculating, meticulously logging every detail of this flagrant violation. The detective found her purse on the nightstand, his movements too practiced, too fluid. With a subtle, almost imperceptible motion, he slid something small into a side pocket before retrieving it with a flourish. "Well, well," he announced, a performative triumph in his voice. "Look what we have here." A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved the woman's lips. Her federal credentials folder, clearly visible, lay untouched on the dresser, a testament to their tunnel vision. On her nightstand, an encrypted phone charged silently, a digital vault containing 15 years of federal case files. The detective held up a small plastic baggie, white powder catching the flashlight's beam. Her fingers idly traced the edge of her bedsheet. Beneath it, something entirely overlooked. The phone on her nightstand held secrets that stretched back a decade and a half, yet remained unnoticed. The detective remained oblivious to the identity of the person he had just disturbed, but she knew precisely why they were there. This was no random incident, no mere mistake. This was the moment she had patiently anticipated, the culmination of a long-term strategy. The federal case files, now scattered across her floor, began to tell a story far different from the narrative they intended to construct. Her digital recorder, ingeniously concealed within the bedroom lamp, had been active since the door's explosive entry. Every word spoken, every piece of evidence planted, every illegal entry, all meticulously captured, an incontrovertible record. The sergeant now searched her closet, his hands trembling slightly, a tremor that registered as a subtle victory for her. He should be nervous. She remained perfectly still, yet her mind raced through complex protocols, federal evidence procedures, constitutional violations, civil rights law. They had no comprehension of the labyrinthine legal and ethical quagmire they had just entered. Straightening on the bed, her voice, calm and authoritative, cut through the tension. "I need to see your warrant." The detective's dismissive reply was immediate. "We don't need a warrant for a noise complaint, sweetheart." Her response carried the gravitas of professional experience. "You do for a search this extensive. You've exceeded the scope of any noise complaint investigation. The sergeant paused, mid-search. The detective's jaw tightened. You some kind of lawyer? I know my rights under the Fourth Amendment, she stated, her voice level, professional. This is an illegal search. The captain, having observed from the doorway, stepped forward. Ma'am, we received reports of drug activity at this address. From whom? She countered, pressing for specifics. What specific probable cause justified forced entry? The three men exchanged uneasy glances. The question hung heavy in the air, dense as smoke. The sergeant recovered first. Anonymous tip said you were dealing. Her legal knowledge flowed effortlessly, citing foundational precedents. Anonymous tips do not justify warrantless searches of private residences. Miranda v. Arizona, Terry v. Ohio, Mapp v. Ohio. The detective's face darkened with resentment. You think you're smart? I think you're violating federal law, she retorted, the words hitting with the force of a physical blow. Federal law. The distinction was critical, elevating the stakes far beyond a local misdemeanor. The captain cleared his throat, an anxious sound. Let's just get her processed. But she was far from finished. I need your badge numbers, all three of you. You're not in a position to make demands, the sergeant growled. Every citizen has the right to identify officers conducting searches. She met each man's gaze directly. Badge numbers. Now. The detective's hand instinctively covered his badge. You don't need... The law disagrees. Her calm persistence unnerved them. Most suspects were panicked, confused, easily manipulated. This woman dissected their procedure with the precision of a surgeon. The captain, clearly sensing the deepening trouble, provided his number reluctantly. The others followed suit. She repeated each number back perfectly, cementing them in her memory. I also need confirmation that your body cameras are recording. The sergeant's hand moved to his chest cam. The red light blinked steadily. They're recording. Good, she affirmed. So, when this goes to federal court, there will be a complete record. Federal court. The term echoed again, a potent threat. The detective leaned closer, adopting an intimidating posture. Listen, lady, we found drugs in your house. You can cooperate or we can make this real hard for you. Are you threatening me? She asked, her voice unwavering. I'm giving you options. She studied his face intently. Option 1, I confess to crimes I didn't commit. Option 2, you manufacture additional charges. The room fell silent, save for the faint crackle of radio static. You got a smart mouth, the sergeant said. I have constitutional rights. The detective pulled out handcuffs. You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance. As the cold metal clicked around her wrists, her voice, clear and resonant, addressed the body cameras directly. I'm being arrested based on planted evidence. The officers conducted an illegal search without probable cause or warrant. I did not consent to this search. Shut up, the detective hissed. I have the right to remain silent, but I also have the right to speak. Her voice never wavered. This is a false arrest based on fabricated evidence. The sergeant roughly grabbed her arm. Move. She complied, but continued speaking. I'm requesting immediate legal counsel. I'm requesting a supervisor. I'm requesting a review of the body camera footage. Each request, delivered with precise protocol, highlighted her professional training. The captain studied her carefully. Something was profoundly wrong. As they led her through the destroyed living room, she cataloged every violation: excessive force, unlawful entry, evidence tampering, civil rights violations. The detective's next question made the sergeant's hand freeze. How do you know so much about police procedure? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her federal credentials folder still sat on the dresser, unnoticed, its silence more eloquent than any words. The planted evidence was not the only thing incongruous in this room. At the front door, the sergeant's unease crystallized. She knew more than any civilian should. Her questions were too specific, her language too precise, her calm too complete. Normal people don't quote case law during arrests. They don't request body camera reviews, nor do they possess intimate knowledge of federal court procedures. The detective pushed her toward the patrol car, but doubt had begun to creep into his voice. "You ever been arrested before?" "No." "Then how do I what?" Her counter-question reversed the interrogation. The detective couldn't finish his sentence, the potential answer far more troubling than he was prepared to confront. The sergeant opened the car door. Radio chatter filled the cool night air, dispatch calls filtering through static. Normal police business continued, oblivious to the monumental mistake unfolding. The woman slid into the back seat without resistance. Through the window, she watched them collect evidence from her home. They bagged the planted drugs, photographed the damage they had wrought, documented everything except the truth. But the truth, in its own way, was documenting itself. Her encrypted phone still charged on the nightstand. Her federal files still lay scattered. Her credentials still sat in plain sight. And the digital recorder in the bedroom lamp continued to run. The detective slammed the car door. Through the glass, she heard him talking to the captain. "Something's off about her." "How so?" "She knows too much." The captain glanced back at the car, at the woman sitting calmly in custody. "Run her name when we get to the station." "Already planning on it." But they had already waited too long, made too many mistakes, left too much incontrovertible evidence. The woman in the back seat was not their victim. She was their reckoning. The patrol car pulled away from the destroyed house, broken glass glittering in the streetlight's glow behind them. The detective drove, the sergeant rode shotgun, and the captain followed in a separate vehicle, standard procedure for high-value arrests. But this was far from standard. The woman sat in the back cage, handcuffed behind her, the metal partition a barrier between her and the officers. She used the reflection in the window to study their faces. The sergeant turned around. "You going to tell us what you really do for work?" She offered no response. "Strong, silent type, huh?" The detective adjusted his rear-view mirror, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "We'll see how long that lasts." Through the radio, dispatch crackled with routine calls, domestic disturbance on 5th Street, traffic stop on the highway. The night continued its normal rhythm, utterly unaware of the seismic shift they had just initiated. The sergeant's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Think she heard anything about the investigation?" The detective glanced in the mirror, a sudden unease in his eyes. "What investigation?" "You know what investigation." A pause, punctuated by the radio's static. "She can't know about that," the detective said, though doubt now threaded through his voice. The woman memorized every word, every implicit admission, every tell. They turned onto Main Street. The police station, a fortress of concrete and fluorescent lighting, loomed ahead, a bureaucratic maw designed to swallow and disappear individuals into the system. The detective parked in the prisoner transport area, security cameras tracking their arrival. "Listen," the sergeant said, turning again, his tone a mix of warning and cajolery. "This can go easy or hard. Depends on you." She met his eyes through the partition. "Which way preserves your careers?" The question hit him like ice water, stripping away his bravado. The detective killed the engine. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you should think carefully about your next moves." The sergeant's laugh sounded forced, brittle. "Lady, you're the one in handcuffs, for now." 2 words, simple, quiet, terrifying. The detective got out first, opened her door. The cuffs bit into her wrists as he helped her stand. "We're going to teach you some respect," he muttered. She didn't resist as he guided her toward the building, but she meticulously catalogued every rough grab, every unnecessary push. Every violation of prisoner transport protocols. The body cameras, she knew, recorded it all. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sterile, unforgiving glow. The booking desk sergeant looked up from his paperwork. What we got? Cocaine possession. Resisting arrest. Her voice, clear and calm, interjected. I didn't resist arrest. Shut up, the detective snapped. The booking sergeant frowned, something in her voice not aligning with the charges. I need to make a phone call, she stated. You'll get your call when we say so, the detective retorted. That's illegal, she calmly asserted. The booking sergeant's frown deepened. Ma'am, you have the right to. She knows her rights, the detective interrupted. She won't shut up about them. Standard booking procedure began. Fingerprints, photographs, personal property inventory. When they processed her wallet, the booking sergeant paused. Here, you work for the federal government? The detective's hand froze over the keyboard. What kind of federal work? The woman remained silent, her employment verification poised to speak for her. The booking sergeant typed her information into the system. The computer processed the data, cross-referencing federal databases. The screen flashed a warning. Detective, the booking sergeant called, his voice tinged with urgency. You need to see this. The detective approached the terminal, read the screen. His face went pale. Her federal ID number had triggered something unexpected, a flag identifying her as a federal law enforcement officer, a 15-year veteran, currently assigned to the Internal Affairs Division. The detective's radio crackled with an urgent message, but it was too late for urgency. They had already crossed every conceivable line. The booking sergeant looked between the screen and the woman in handcuffs. His training kicked in. Federal officers required different protocols, special notifications. I need to make some calls, he said quietly. The detective grabbed his arm. Not yet. Detective, if she's federal, she's a suspect. Nothing more. But the computer screen told a different story. And computers, unlike people, do not lie. The woman watched their panic build, observing the precise moment they realized their mistake. The exact second their confidence cracked. She had been waiting 15 years for this moment, for these 3 officers to finally make the error that would bring them down. Tonight, they hadn't just kicked in the wrong door. They had kicked in the door of the federal agent actively investigating them. Officer Sarah Johnson reviewed the body camera footage in the equipment room. Her hands trembled as she fast-forwarded through the raid. The timestamp read 21:17 a.m. The door exploding inward. The woman in underwear, hands raised, a calm voice requesting warrant information. Johnson rewound, playing it again. Something was profoundly wrong with this arrest. The woman quoted law like a textbook, requested badge numbers with professional precision, and knew federal court procedures better than most lawyers. Johnson paused the footage, studying the woman's face. No panic, no confusion, just cold calculation, as if she were actively gathering evidence. The next clip showed the planted drugs. Johnson's stomach churned. The detective's hands moved too smoothly, too practiced. He slid the baggie into the purse, then immediately discovered it. She had heard whispers about evidence planting, but had never witnessed it directly, never had it recorded on her own body camera. Johnson fast-forwarded to the arrest. The woman's voice cut through the radio static. I'm being arrested based on planted evidence. Clear, direct, legally precise. Johnson ran the woman's name through the federal database. The results made her blood freeze. FBI agent, 15 years of service, currently assigned to the Public Corruption Unit, the very unit rumored to be investigating their department. Johnson's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. The FBI tip line number was memorized, a requirement for all officers. She dialed. Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is Officer Johnson, Metro Police. I need to report a federal agent in custody. Silence on the line. Can you repeat that? We arrested a federal agent tonight. I think it was intentional. The line went quiet except for typing sounds. Agent's name? Johnson read from the database. Diana Marshall, FBI Public Corruption Unit. More typing, faster now. Officer, where is Agent Marshall now? Holding cell. They're trying to process her on drug charges. Are you certain about the drug charges? Johnson closed her eyes, the image of the planted evidence searing her memory. The drugs were planted. I have it on body camera. The FBI agent's voice sharpened. Do not let anyone delete that footage. Do you understand? Yes, sir. We're sending a team. Keep Agent Marshall safe. The line went dead. Johnson sat in the equipment room, surrounded by charging body cameras. Each device held fragments of corruption, pieces of a puzzle she was finally seeing clearly. Her radio crackled. Captain Wilson's voice, laced with urgency, cut through the static. All units, expedite the Marshall processing. I want her transferred to county within the hour. Johnson's blood turned to ice. They were rushing the case, attempting to bury it in the county system where federal oversight was harder to establish. She grabbed the evidence bag containing Diana's personal items. Inside, mixed with wallet and keys, were federal credentials. FBI Special Agent Diana Marshall, badge number embedded in gold metal. The same badge number that appeared on every internal investigation report filed against their unit. Johnson pieced it together. Diana wasn't just any federal agent. She was the agent investigating them. Has been for months, maybe years. Every suspicious arrest, every questionable search, every planted evidence case, Diana Marshall's signature appeared on the investigation files. And tonight, they had given her everything she needed to destroy them. Johnson's conscience warred with her loyalty. These men had trained her, protected her, become her second family. But family doesn't plant evidence on innocent people. Family doesn't violate constitutional rights. Family doesn't arrest federal agents investigating corruption. Her phone buzzed. A text message from the detective. Delete the body cam footage. Equipment malfunction. Johnson stared at the message, at the clear order to obstruct justice. She typed back, copy that. But she didn't delete anything. Instead, she uploaded the footage to a secure federal server, the very server Diana Marshall likely used for evidence collection. Johnson's next decision would define her career and her conscience. Captain Wilson appeared in the doorway. Johnson, did you wipe that footage? Working on it, sir. Wilson studied her face, searching for tells, for signs of betrayal. Good. This stays between us. Johnson nodded. Of course, sir. But Wilson's overt pressure suggested this wasn't their first cover-up. The federal investigation rumors suddenly made perfect sense. Diana Marshall wasn't just investigating corruption. She had been living it, documenting it, building an airtight case, and Johnson had just become her key witness. FBI Assistant Director James Rodriguez received Johnson's call at home. His secure phone buzzed on the nightstand, triggering federal emergency protocol. He answered on the first ring. Rodriguez. Sir, this is Agent Marshall's handler. We have a situation. Rodriguez sat up immediately. Diana Marshall was his best undercover investigator, 15 years of flawless service. What's the status? Local police arrested her an hour ago. Drug possession charges. The arresting officers are her targets. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. They made her? Unknown, but they planted evidence. We have body camera confirmation. The assistant director was already reaching for his clothes. Where is she now? Metro Police holding. They're rushing county transfer. Negative. Stop that transfer immediately. Rodriguez activated his emergency team while still on the phone. Federal Rapid Response mobilized within minutes. Sir, there's more. Agent Marshall's emergency beacon just activated. Rodriguez froze. Diana's beacon only activated in life-threatening situations. When? 30 seconds ago. The beacon signal appeared on Rodriguez's phone screen. GPS coordinates locked onto the police station. Full federal response now. Rodriguez called his second in command. Operation Clean House is compromised. Marshall's in custody. Jesus, how bad? They arrested our lead investigator while she was gathering evidence against them. Rodriguez's team assembled at the federal building. Tactical units, evidence specialists, internal affairs investigators. The corruption case they'd been building for 2 years had just become a federal emergency. Diana Marshall didn't just know about police corruption. She was the corruption investigation. Rodriguez briefed his team in the command vehicle. Agent Marshall has been undercover for 18 months. Tonight's arrest gives us everything we need. How so? They just provided direct evidence of the conspiracy we've been investigating. The surveillance van positioned itself outside the police station. Electronic equipment locked onto internal communications. Police radios crackled with nervous chatter, officers discussing damage control and attempts to keep stories straight. Rodriguez listened through federal intercept equipment, every word recorded, every conspiratorial admission documented. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're intercepting destruction orders. They're trying to wipe body camera footage." Too late for that. Rodriguez opened Diana's case file. 15 years of corruption investigations, hundreds of documented violations, dozens of officers implicated. Tonight's arrest connected every piece. The surveillance van's equipment hummed quietly. Federal warrants were already prepared, signed, ready for execution. "Director, we have movement inside. They're transferring Marshall to county." "Not happening." Rodriguez radioed his legal team. "Execute the federal warrants, full jurisdiction." The local police had no idea what was coming. For 2 years, Diana Marshall had gathered evidence of systematic corruption, planted evidence, false arrests, civil rights violations. She documented everything. And tonight, they handed her the final piece of the puzzle. Rodriguez checked Diana's beacon again, still transmitting from inside the police station. Team leaders prepared for immediate entry. His radio crackled with confirmations. Federal agents surrounded the building. Rodriguez's order changed everything. "Full federal response now." The operation Diana Marshall had spent 15 years building was about to conclude. Not with her arrest, but with theirs. The surveillance van's equipment locked onto the police station's internal systems, body camera servers, evidence databases, internal communications. Everything Diana needed to complete her case, and everything Rodriguez needed to end the corruption. Diana's beacon revealed she was exactly where they suspected she would be, in the heart of the conspiracy, gathering the final evidence that would destroy it. Rodriguez spoke into his radio. "All units, federal authority is now in effect." The local police thought they caught their biggest threat. They just activated their worst nightmare. Diana sat alone in interview room 3. Gray walls, a cold metal table, a single chair bolted to the floor. The fluorescent light flickered overhead like a dying heartbeat. The detective entered with a thick file folder, propping it on the table with theatrical flair. "Let's talk about your drug business." Diana offered no response. Her eyes tracked the security camera in the corner, its red recording light blinking steadily. "We found cocaine in your house. High-grade stuff, street value around 5,000. Planted evidence." The detective leaned back, feigning incredulity. "You sure about that?" "I watched you plant it." "That's a serious accusation." Diana's voice remained level. "It's a documented fact." The detective opened his file. Pages of fabricated reports, fictional surveillance notes, manufactured evidence chains. "Says here, you've been dealing for months. Your paperwork is fiction. Multiple witnesses saw drug activity at your address." "Name one witness." The detective's pause stretched too long. "Anonymous sources." "Anonymous sources don't exist in federal court." Federal court. There's that word again. The detective's confidence cracked slightly. "You think federal court is going to save you?" Diana met his eyes. "I think federal court is where this ends." The sergeant entered without knocking, whispering something urgent in the detective's ear. The detective's face hardened. Step outside." They left Diana alone in the interview room. Through the thin walls, she heard heated discussion. The computer flagged her as federal law enforcement. So what? So we arrested a federal agent. She's a drug dealer who happens to work for the government. Detective, this is dangerous territory. Diana used the time alone to mentally catalog every violation. Miranda rights delayed, phone call denied, excessive force during transport. Each violation further strengthened her meticulously built case. The detective returned alone, slamming the door harder than necessary. "Let's try this again. Who supplies your cocaine?" "I don't use or distribute cocaine." "The evidence says different." "The planted evidence." His fist hit the table. "Stop saying that." Diana didn't flinch. "Stop planting evidence." The detective leaned across the table, invading her personal space, a classic intimidation technique. "You think you're smart? Think you can outsmart us?" Diana's next statement made his face go pale. "I think you've been under federal investigation for 2 years." The room went silent, except for the flickering fluorescent light. The detective straightened slowly. "What did you say?" "Operation Clean House. Ring any bells?" The blood drained from his face. "Operation Clean House is classified. Only federal investigators and high-level corruption targets know that name." Diana continued, her voice steady as stone. "Systematic evidence planting, civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive citizens of constitutional protections." The detective's hands shook slightly. "How do you know about your crimes?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The detective backed toward the door. "I need to make a call to Captain Wilson or directly to your lawyer." He stopped, hand frozen on the door handle. "You should choose carefully," Diana said. "Your next decisions matter." The detective fled the room, leaving Diana alone with her thoughts and the recording camera. Through the walls, she heard frantic phone calls, damage control meetings, panic spreading through the department like wildfire. Officer Johnson appeared in the doorway, nervous energy radiating from her uniform. "Ma'am, I brought you water." Johnson set a paper cup on the table, her hand brushing Diana's briefly. Something passed between them, understanding, an unspoken alliance. Johnson slipped Diana a folded piece of paper, small, discreet. Diana palmed it without looking, waiting until Johnson left before reading it. "FBI knows. Help coming. Stay strong." Relief, the first positive emotion she'd felt all night, flooded through Diana's chest. Her backup knew where she was. Captain Wilson's sudden call-off suggested federal pressure was building. The interview room door opened again. Wilson himself appeared. "Agent Marshall, I apologize for the confusion." Agent Marshall, not suspect, not drug dealer. Wilson's acknowledgement changed everything. The pretense dropped. The game ended. Diana stood slowly. "I'd like my phone call now." "Of course." As they walked to the phone, Johnson slipped Diana something unexpected, her federal badge, retrieved from evidence. The relief washed over Diana as she held the familiar weight. Soon, very soon, the real investigation would begin. Captain Wilson escorted Diana to the release desk. His smile looked painted on, professional courtesy masking pure terror. All charges dropped pending further investigation. The booking sergeant processed her release papers, his hands moving quickly, too quickly, eager to get her out of the building. Diana collected her personal items, wallet, keys, federal credentials, and her encrypted phone. 23 missed calls from FBI headquarters. Wilson cleared his throat. "We apologize for any inconvenience." Diana didn't respond. She signed the release forms in silence. "No hard feelings?" Wilson tried. Diana looked directly at him. "That remains to be seen." The words hung between them like a loaded weapon. Outside the police station, dawn crept across the horizon, painting the sky in muted hues. Diana walked to her car, acutely aware that they were watching, tracking her movements. She activated full recording mode on her phone. Every conversation, every interaction, every piece of evidence would now be captured in real time. The phone buzzed immediately. Rodriguez's voice cut through the static. "Marshal, are you secure?" "Negative. Still under surveillance." "Copy that. Federal units are in position." Diana started her car but didn't drive away. She sat in the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear. "Status report," Rodriguez demanded. "They provided everything we needed, planted evidence on body camera, constitutional violations documented, conspiracy to obstruct justice confirmed." "Outstanding work." Through her rear-view mirror, Diana watched the police station. Lights burned in every window. Emergency meetings were undoubtedly in progress. "Sir, they know about Operation Cleanhouse." "How?" "I told them." Rodriguez's laugh crackled through the phone. "Perfect. Let them panic." Inside the station, Wilson paced his office. The detective and sergeant sat across from his desk like guilty children. "Do you understand what you've done?" The detective's voice cracked. "We followed procedure. You arrested a federal agent investigating our department. We didn't know. You should have known." Wilson opened his desk drawer, pulling out a thick file labeled Confidential Federal Investigation. "She's been watching us for 2 years." The sergeant went pale. 2 years? "Every arrest, every search, every piece of evidence we've ever planted." Wilson threw the file across his desk. Pages scattered. Internal memos, surveillance reports, evidence logs, all documenting their corruption, all signed by Diana Marshall. "She has everything," Wilson said quietly. The detective's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Federal warrants executed in 30 minutes. Recommend legal counsel." His hands shook as he showed the message to Wilson. "It's over," Wilson said, a hollow resignation in his voice. But Diana's phone showed a different message from Rodriguez. "Federal raid commencing. Operation Cleanhouse enters final phase." Diana started her engine. Time to go home and wait. Wilson's destruction order came too late. The evidence had already been uploaded, secured, distributed to federal prosecutors. Body camera footage now resided on federal servers, far beyond local department control. The detective ran to the equipment room, finding the body cameras connected to external networks, federal networks. Every piece of footage automatically backed up to FBI servers. "Johnson!" he screamed, but Johnson had left an hour ago, called in sick, and wouldn't be back. Diana's phone buzzed with final confirmation. The federal investigation she'd been building for 15 years was complete. Every corruption case documented, every civil rights violation recorded, every conspiracy mapped. Tonight's arrest wasn't their victory. It was her evidence collection. The biggest mistake of their careers just became the cornerstone of her federal case. Diana pulled out of the parking lot. In her rearview mirror, the police station burned with desperate activity. Too little, too late. The real investigation was about to begin, and this time, she wouldn't be the one in handcuffs. At exactly 6 o'clock a.m., a fleet of black SUVs surrounded the Metro Police Station. FBI tactical teams exited in perfect formation, moving with disciplined precision. Federal marshals took positions at every entrance, sealing the building. Assistant Director Rodriguez led the operation personally, his presence underscoring the gravity of the federal intervention. Inside the station, Wilson watched from his office window, a grim resignation settling over him. "They're here!" The detective and sergeant stood frozen as federal agents poured through the front doors, their entry swift and decisive. Rodriguez's voice boomed across the station, amplified by a bullhorn. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. This facility is now under federal jurisdiction." Officers scattered like startled birds, some instinctively reaching for weapons, others raising their hands in surrender. "Stand down!" Rodriguez commanded, his voice unwavering. All personnel will comply with federal authority. Wilson emerged from his office, hands visible, a carefully constructed posture of compliance. Director Rodriguez, this is irregular. Captain Wilson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights. The words echoed through the station like gunshots, the swift application of federal law, a stark contrast to the previous night's chaos. Federal agents swarmed the building. Evidence teams secured computers. Technical specialists downloaded body camera footage. Legal experts served warrants. The detective backed against the wall, a desperate plea on his lips. This is insane! We're police officers! Rodriguez approached him slowly, his gaze unflinching. Detective Morrison, you're under arrest for evidence tampering, false imprisonment, and deprivation of rights under color of law. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. Rodriguez signaled his team. Bring her in. The front doors opened again. Diana Marshall entered, no longer in handcuffs. She wore her FBI windbreaker now, federal credentials displayed prominently. The entire station fell silent, every eye fixed on her. Rodriguez held up Diana's badge for everyone to see. Special Agent Diana Marshall, lead investigator, Operation Clean House. The shock hit the room like a physical wave. Diana wasn't their victim. She was their judge. Rodriguez continued, his voice carrying to every corner. Agent Marshall has been investigating this department for 15 years. 15 years. Every arrest they made while she watched, every piece of evidence they planted while she documented, every constitutional violation she recorded. Morrison's face went white. 15 years. Diana stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of federal law enforcement. Every illegal search, every planted drug charge, every civil rights violation. She pulled out her phone, the same encrypted device they had ignored during the raid. 2,000 hours of surveillance footage, 300 recorded conversations, 67 documented evidence plantings. The numbers hit like sledgehammers, each statistic a testament to systematic criminality. Rodriguez took over. Agent Marshall's investigation has yielded federal indictments against 23 officers. 23, nearly half the department. Diana opened her case file. The real case file, federal documentation spanning 15 years. Detective Morrison, 17 confirmed evidence plantings, 43 illegal searches, 26 constitutional violations. Morrison's knees buckled. Sergeant Bradley, 22 evidence tamperings, 31 false arrest reports, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Bradley slumped against the wall, defeated. Captain Wilson, conspiracy to operate a criminal enterprise under color of law, systematic violation of citizens' constitutional rights. Wilson closed his eyes, the weight of the charges crushing him. Diana continued reading, each name, each crime, each piece of evidence meticulously documented. The federal investigation she built brick by brick, case by case, violation by violation. Rodriguez addressed the room. Operation Clean House has documented systematic corruption spanning 2 decades. The timeline stretched back further than anyone imagined. Diana wasn't investigating recent crimes. She was exposing institutional rot. Federal evidence teams wheeled out computers, servers, file cabinets, body cameras, everything that might contain additional evidence. Morrison found his voice, a desperate whisper. We were just doing our jobs. Diana faced him directly. Planting drugs isn't police work. It's criminal conspiracy. She activated her phone's speaker, playing back audio from the raid. Morrison's voice, clear as crystal. Look what we have here. The distinct sound of the evidence bag being pulled from her purse. Then Diana's voice. I watched you plant it. The recording continued. Every word, every threat, every violation. Morrison's own body camera had betrayed him. Rodriguez explained to the stunned officers. Agent Marshall's emergency beacon activated during booking. Federal surveillance recorded everything. The pieces clicked together. Diana's calm during arrest, her legal knowledge, her precise questions. She wasn't panicking because she knew backup was coming. She was collecting evidence because that's what federal agents do. Rodriguez held up another device. This digital recorder was hidden in Agent Marshall's bedroom lamp. It captured the entire raid. The detective who planted evidence, the sergeant who threatened her, the captain who ordered the cover-up, all recorded, all documented, all admissible in federal court. Diana's 15-year investigation culminated in this moment. Every corrupt officer identified, every crime documented, every victim vindicated. The evidence didn't just show individual misconduct, it revealed a systematic criminal enterprise. Rodriguez addressed the room one final time. Federal charges will be filed within 24 hours. The machinery of justice began turning, and Diana Marshall, after 15 years of patient investigation, finally had her case. Morrison's corruption file was 6 inches thick, the evidence going back 15 years. Tonight wasn't about drugs or noise complaints. It was about justice delayed finally becoming justice delivered, a testament to the unwavering principle that no one, especially those sworn to uphold the law, is above it. 6 months later, the federal district court buzzed with anticipation. The corruption trial of the decade reached its conclusion. Diana Marshall sat at the prosecutor's table, 15 years of investigation condensed into evidence boxes stacked 10 feet high, a silent monument to her persistence. Judge Harrison reviewed the verdict forms. 23 defendants, hundreds of charges, systematic justice finally served. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. Morrison sat in the defendant's chair, federal orange replacing his police uniform. His hands shook as the foreman spoke. On the charge of conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. Diana allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The first guilty verdict in a case built on 15 years of unwavering patience. On the charge of evidence tampering, guilty. On the charge of false imprisonment, guilty, 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 guilty. Each verdict echoed through the courtroom like thunder, a resonant affirmation of accountability. Bradley received 12 years in federal prison. Wilson, 15. Morrison drew 20. Their badges meant nothing. Their uniforms provided no protection. Federal law applies to everyone, equally. Diana's testimony had sealed their fate. Cool, professional, devastating. She recounted every planted drug charge, every illegal search, every constitutional violation. The jury listened with growing horror as the true scope of the corruption emerged. Not individual misconduct, but a pervasive, systematic criminal enterprise that had eroded public trust for decades. After the sentencing, Diana stepped into the courthouse hallway. Reporters swarmed with questions. Agent Marshall, how long did this investigation take? 15 years of careful documentation. What message does this send? Diana considered the question, her gaze thoughtful. Justice requires patience, courage, and people willing to work within the system to change it. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Truth doesn't disappear. It waits for the right moment to surface. The reporters scribbled frantically. This quote would lead tomorrow's headlines. Sarah Johnson approached through the crowd. She had testified for the prosecution, turning state's evidence, choosing conscience over corruption. Agent Marshall? Diana turned. Thank you for giving me the chance to do the right thing. You made that choice yourself. Johnson's testimony proved crucial, providing the insider perspective that corroborated Diana's voluminous evidence. Her career survived, transformed, transferred to federal task force work, a new beginning earned through profound moral courage. Diana walked to her car, passing protesters on the courthouse steps, their signs demanding police reform. Community voices, long suppressed, were finally heard. Some changes happen overnight. Others take decades. This investigation began with whispered rumors about planted evidence. It ended with federal convictions and the promise of systematic reform. New training protocols were implemented, body camera requirements strengthened, federal oversight expanded. The community healing process began, slowly, trust rebuilding one interaction at a time. Diana's phone buzzed, Rodriguez calling from headquarters. "Outstanding work, Marshal. The corruption unit wants to discuss your next assignment." Diana looked back at the courthouse. Justice served, but more work waiting. "What's the case?" "Immigration detention facilities, systematic abuse allegations. Could take years to build. Years of undercover work, patient evidence gathering, methodical justice building." "I'll take it." This is what she does, who she is. Federal agent, truth seeker, justice builder. Reform doesn't happen overnight, but it happens one corrupt system at a time, one patient investigation at a time. Diana drove away from the courthouse, knowing her next case file was already waiting. The work continues. The mission endures. Justice delayed isn't justice denied when truth-tellers persist. Morrison will serve 20 years in federal prison, Bradley 12, Wilson 15. Their victims received compensation. Their crimes entered the permanent record, and Diana Marshall returned to the field, ready to spend another 15 years building the next case. Because corruption hides in darkness, but federal agents work in light, and light always wins. Eventually, the community rebuilds, the system reforms, the truth survives, one case at a time, one patient investigation at a time. Justice served through dedication, persistence, and unwavering commitment to constitutional law. Diana's next case begins tomorrow. The work never ends, but neither does the mission. Truth, justice, federal law applied equally to everyone, even those who wear badges. Especially those who wear badges.